I saw George. He was banged up. He had 2 big bandages that weren't flat. It looked like had a bump on them.
This neighbor, who didn't want us to show his face, is talking for the first time about what he saw on George Zimmerman's face less than 24 hours after Zimmerman shot and killed Trayvon Martin.
I see him have a big bandage on his nose and his nose swollen. On the side where his eyes were at, it was swollen.
He shows us exactly where on this picture.
I seen the bandage right here. There's a big bandage, and this side of his nose and this side of his nose was swollen.
This, the surveillance video released by Sanford police of Zimmerman when he was brought in for questioning after the shooting. Bruises and bandages aren't visible, but you can see an officer looking at the back of his head.
You get into a fight. You don't show bruises that day. You show them the next day.
He claimed self-defense. What's your response to that?
I think something happened that night where he had to defend himself. 10 being the worst, it was about roughly 7 or 8.
His thoughts on this 911 call made on February 26th, Zimmerman screaming for help.
They're sending.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your attitude on it?
You feel this because?
I hear his voice every single day. I talk to him every single day.
So why did he decide to speak out tonight?
I've been thinking it morning, noon, and night. Ever since I seen the bandages on him.
Do you think no matter what that anyone has a right to pull a trigger, though?
I think somebody has the right to pull the trigger if their life is on the line.
He believes Zimmerman was defending his life, and that's why he says he's defending Zimmerman now. Do you not think there's races involved here?
I don't think racism is involved at all, because I seen black folks, African Americans, come to George's house.
The person talking about George Zimmerman's injuries was pointing to the left side of George Zimmerman's face. There have been many complaints that George Zimmerman's nose did not look broken in the police surveillance videos. I had pointed out to people that a broken nose does not swell up within 40 minutes after Trayvon Martin broke George Zimmerman's nose. I know that swelling in a black eye does not occur until the next day because I have had a hairline fractured broken nose on my left side. I also did not go to the hospital for x-rays until the next day when the swelling had occurred, just like George Zimmerman. This map shows where Brandy Green's townhouse was at with the light blue X. This was not that far for Trayvon Martin to run. He could have made it home after George Zimmerman lost sight of him easily. Instead, Trayvon Martin doubled back and struck George Zimmerman from behind and to his left. Trayvon Martin was hiding behind that white fence on your right, ran out and struck George Zimmerman with his left fist. So my question is, was Trayvon Martin left-handed? Here we have Trayvon holding a football with his left hand. Here we have Trayvon leaning toward the camera with his left side. But here is one indication that Trayvon Martin was right-handed, waving his money. But perhaps Trayvon Martin was ambidextrous, as indicated in this picture. Here is something that is striking about Trayvon Martin. His hands are huge. My hands are above average in size, but much smaller than Trayvon Martin's hands. I can almost hold an Arizona tea can to solidify my punch with a fist. This would account for both Trayvon Martin being able to break George Zimmerman's nose, decking him with one punch, as well as keeping his hand in pristine condition for the mortician. And yes, big hands mean big feet. So I am making the following 2 predictions about Trayvon Martin, which will be revealed in the police investigation. 1. Trayvon Martin was a southpaw, but possibly mixed hands, such as throwing a punch or a football with his left hand, but riding with his right hand. Trayvon Martin used either the Arizona iced tea can or something to solidify his punch. It could have been something in the commons. It's been speculated Trayvon Martin had time to get back to his townhouse and he could have got something there. But the most logical choice would be the Arizona tea can. It is not easy to break someone's nose, even if you are an experienced street fighter like Trayvon Martin. Even when you have a 6 to 7 inch height advantage, as Martin did over Zimmerman. My predictions are nothing more than that. But what is not speculation is this. The policeman was checking the back of George Zimmerman's head for bleeding in the police surveillance video. There was more than one gash to George Zimmerman's head, indicating his head was struck against the concrete more than once. Now, George did not get stitches for those wounds, indicating these were not deep cuts. But there would have been considerable bleeding from those head lacerations, and there is no doubt in my mind that George Zimmerman saw the blood coming from his head. So, the pain, the blood, the bullet. George Zimmerman used his pistol in self-defense to kill Trayvon Martin. What has almost been ignored has been that George Zimmerman was interviewed by the police for 5 hours without an attorney. This means that George told a solid, consistent account of what he witnessed and endured for him not to be charged with a crime that night. The lead police detective recommending George Zimmerman be arrested for manslaughter is meaningless. The detective is not the attorney who would prosecute the case. Once George Zimmerman is arrested, the clock starts ticking for him to be brought to a speedy trial under the 6th Amendment. If the prosecutor is unable to proceed to such a speedy trial, then the case against George Zimmerman will be dismissed with prejudice. The grand jury that will hear the case against George Zimmerman convenes on April 10th. It is said a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich, so there is a probability that criminal charges will be brought against George Zimmerman and he will be arrested. However, if the charges are brought against George Zimmerman, it can be said that a grand jury will indict a hamburger. And that is because that is what the back of George Zimmerman's head looks like.